everybody, this is my first story time and I thought I'd start it off strong with the story of how I cut off part of my finger. Now, if you clicked on this video and you were hoping for a severe severing or like me to be missing knuckles or anything, this isn't that kind of story. I did cut off a decent chunk and we'll get to that. I did have to go to the hospital, but I did manage, luckily, to not cut like whoop. So I still have my finger, it's just way skinnier than my other hand. I'm not going to get into too many gruesome details, but this is a story about cutting off my finger, so if just the mention of blood freaks you out, you might want to click away now. Alright, so this all started on St. Patrick's Day, and at the time I lived near Chicago, which, if you know anything about Chicago and St. Patrick's Day, it's a huge deal. I mean, they dye the river green, for goodness sakes. What made this St. Patrick's Day even more special was that it was on a Friday night. So debauchery was going to be had no matter what. I got off of work and I went and picked up my friend from the north side. Then we went and stopped and had a drink at a pub that had, you know, some bagpipe players playing. They had some Irish dancers performing. It was a good old-fashioned Irish pub. We had a drink, had some dinner, then we decided to go back to my place. We went back to my place and we played a game, and we actually started to film a video for YouTube, but that'll never see the light of day. But we did also keep drinking. At some point we decided, let's go out. It's St. Patrick's Day, it's Friday night, we're dressed up, we have green on green on green. I had dyed my hair orange partially where the purple is. Yeah, that was orange, because it's my favorite color, and because I knew St. Patrick's Day was coming up, so I thought the orange and the green would be perfect. We were staying at my condo, which didn't have any furniture in it yet. The furniture was going to be delivered the next day, so the day after St. Patrick's Day, I was going to have a full set of living room furniture and a full set of bedroom furniture being delivered. Before we left, we went to a grocery store and got some snacks so that we'd have something to eat whenever we got back. We were planning on just sleeping on the floor. I had a few gaming chairs and a TV set up in my living room. We got some normal snacks, we got chips and pretzels, and then my bougie butt decided that I wanted some sausage and cheese. That'll become important. So we go out to the bars and we're having a good time. We'd also picked up some glow sticks, so we're rocking the glow sticks, we're looking all cool and cute, having fun, having a good time, and we meet these two guys. Well, technically we met three guys, but one of them was being really creepy, so the other two were helping us evade the third. So my friend Steph and I, which, by the way, she said that I could use her name because she's pretty proud of her role in this story, and I gotta say, I'm pretty proud of her too. And if you want to check out any of her stuff, I have linked her YouTube and her Twitch. She does a lot of Twitch streaming, a lot of video game stuff. I've linked it down in the description below. But anyway, we're having a good time, and I'm pretty drunk, and I make the decision to invite these guys back to my place. Probably not the safest decision that I could have ever made, but I did know that I was with Steph, who I trust, and quite frankly, we definitely could have taken these guys if we needed to. I warned these guys ahead of time that I don't have furniture. All I have is TV, a couple of gaming chairs, and some alcohol and snacks, and quite frankly for them that was good enough. We were all really drunk, so after the bar closes, we all head back to my place. So the two guys, I'll refer to one as Chester and the other as Jesse. Shout out to all my other Dude Where's My Car fans out there. We decide to put on the movie Leprechaun in the Hood, as one does, on St. Patrick's Day. And while we're watching that, we decide we kind of want snacks. So we make some popcorn and we start making some snacks. And partway through, I decide that I want my sausage and cheese. So I go to cut up my cheese and sausage. Now mind you, Steph can see me from where she's sitting in the living room. So I'm sitting there, I managed to slice all the cheese, everything's good. I start slicing the summer sausage. Things are going good for a little bit, and then I miss. I miss the summer sausage and I slice right down my hand. I don't really feel it, it doesn't hurt at all. I don't know if that was the alcohol or if I was just in shock that, well, I just cut off a chunk of my finger, but it starts bleeding. I set down the knife calmly and I walk to the bathroom. My friend Steph sees this happen and thinks, well, that's kind of odd. Why did Casey stop cutting the summer sausage? So she follows me to the bathroom. in the bathroom, I'm trying to put on a Band-Aid. The Band-Aid is not sticking. The Band-Aid is not sticking because I am bleeding profusely. My friend Steph stares at me and she goes, Casey, I don't think that's going to work. And I just kind of look at her and I go, well, why not? I'm bleeding. I just need a Band-Aid. And my friend Steph looks at me and goes, I don't think a Band-Aid's gonna work. At this point, Chester is in the other room and he starts hearing some of the commotion. So he comes and follows to the bathroom and he goes, hey, what's going on? Then he sees my finger. Chester's friend Jesse follows, and Jesse, mind you, is like a knockoff version of Thor. He is tall, he is long hair, looks like a dude's dude. He sees my finger and immediately goes, oh God! He just freaks out. Turns out, Jesse doesn't like blood. Jesse runs out of the room. But Chester stays, and it turns out, luckily for me, Chester has some medical training. So he goes, we need to get you some gauze or something. Do you have a first aid kit? Well, like I said, I hadn't even moved into this place yet. I didn't even have furniture. So I didn't have a first aid kit in the condo. But luckily, I did remember that I keep a first aid kit, a fully stocked first aid kit, in my car. So we go downstairs to my car, get the first aid kit from it, and I have this wad, this massive wad of paper towels just wrapped around my finger, and I'm bleeding through them pretty fast. So we get the first aid kit and we bring it upstairs. My friend Steph this whole time is cleaning my bathroom, cleaning my kitchen, trying to clean up the blood because Jesse is in the living room freaking out. He's just absolutely freaking out. He's hiding underneath the one blanket that I have because he doesn't want to see any of the blood. Chester takes me into the kitchen and he starts wrapping my finger. I have gauze in this first aid kit, but to be honest, the first aid kit is from like the 90s, so it's not the best gauze, but we do make it work. He's wrapping it up and he's telling me, you really might need to go to the hospital. You really might need to go to the emergency room. Of course, while he's talking about that, Jesse is in the other room screaming, oh God, just stop talking about it. Also, while Steph was cleaning the bathroom and the kitchen, she came across my chunk of finger, and luckily she's not very freaked out by blood, so she picked it up and brought it to me and wanted to know if I wanted to keep it. And while I didn't want to keep it, I did kind of want to know what it felt like, so I held it in my hand, and I gotta say, it's a weird feeling to be holding a chunk of your severed finger in one hand while this one's bleeding out. Chester also was kind of curious, so he wanted to feel it too, and we all took turns touching a chunk of my finger while Jesse was in the other room screaming, don't touch it! Why would you touch it? In case you were wondering, it's kind of rubbery. It was almost like I was holding a pencil eraser. Fun fact, gross fact, Eventually we send Jesse out to the balcony so he can smoke and not have to deal with any of the blood. We're wrapping up my finger, and Chester is still telling me, you need to go to the emergency room, you probably need to see a doctor, and I'm like, no, I'm fine. And on top of it, I knew from looking at it that they weren't going to be able to stitch it, because the way I sliced it, there was nothing to stitch closed. I also knew it was 3 a.m. on St. Patrick's Day. We're not going to be the only ones in the emergency room. I didn't want to have to sit and wait. Granted, looking back on it, I probably would have been a pretty high priority with the amount of blood that I was spewing, but that's besides the point. So he gets my finger wrapped, we go and bring Jesse back in, and we decide to just go on with the night as we were doing before. We finish watching Leprechaun in the Hood, and we all just kind of pass out on the floor. We wake up the next morning, and I apologize for like the 50th time for cutting off my finger in front of these strangers that we had just met. Turns out, though, that Jesse and Chester don't think it's that weird, which, you know, make of that as you will. And we decide that since my furniture isn't supposed to be delivered until about like 1 p.m., that we'll go ahead and go get some food. So we decide we go to my favorite stir-fry place, we all sit and we eat, and we talk about the night, and before they leave, Chester gives me his phone number, and he also says, by the way, I still think that you should go to the emergency room. And I tell him, I'm fine. As far as I know, it's not bleeding, and it's all wrapped up. I think I'm good. So me and Steph go back to my place and she's gonna wait with me to get my furniture. So we're waiting around and the guys come and they deliver my living room stuff and they deliver my bedroom stuff, and at some point during that whole chaos, I start to realize that I can see blood starting to seep through the wrapping. Now it's still bleeding and it hasn't clotted yet, so I start to realize that there is a problem. I don't really want to go to the emergency room, so I decide, fine, I'll just go to an urgent care. So I tell Steph, I'll drop you off after, but I'm just gonna run over to the urgent care and we'll see what they say. And so she goes with me and we go to this urgent care. When we get to the urgent care, I go up to the lady and I tell her, I cut off part of my finger, and she gives me a look. And it's a look of kind of shock. And I say, no, it's not that bad. It's just a small part. And so I reassure her that it's fine, everything's fine. And she tells me, okay, then just go sit there. You'll sit in the waiting room. So I'm sitting in the waiting room, and eventually we get called back. Now we get called back and I tell the doctor and the nurse that I have cut off part of my finger. The doctor looks concerned and she tells me to just wait a minute. She has a man in the other room who's having chest pains, and so she wants to go check him out before she takes a look at me. She leaves the room, and the nurse, who will later get reamed out for this, decides that she's going to unwrap my finger. So the nurse starts unwrapping my finger, and unfortunately at this point, when we get down to the gauze that's on the wound, it's semi-fused with the wound. So she rips it off, and it's just an insane amount of pain. And it is probably the most pain that I've been in a long time. And it is just spewing blood. She gets real concerned and says, you might still have to go to the emergency room, but we're gonna wait and see what the doctor says. And I say, okay, but what are we gonna do about it bleeding right now? What she has me do is she has me stick my finger into a saline solution, which kind of burns. And she says, for me to wait, it'll just be a few minutes. Well, the pain starts to get stronger and stronger, and I'm starting to realize that this thing is bleeding a lot. So I have my friend Steph hand me my phone and I call my mom. And my mom lives in the same town at this point, so I call her and I just let her know that I am at urgent care and there's a chance I might need to go to the emergency room because I cut off part of my finger. Luckily for me, my mom is totally not freaked out by blood or injuries, and she figures, well, I'm at urgent care. That's the best place for me at this point, and she tells me to just call her back whenever I know something, and I'm talking to her, and suddenly the pain is just way too much. So I look over at Steph. My mom's still talking to me through the phone. I hand her the phone and say, here's my mom. I'm going to pass out. And sure enough, the minute I say that, whoop, I pass out. And of course, the nurse is nowhere in sight at this point, and neither is the doctor. So Steph hangs up the phone on my mom and then runs out into the hallway and starts yelling for somebody to come help me because I'm passed out. Luckily, I kind of come to almost immediately. It was one of those whoop, whoop things. And the doctor comes in and she goes, oh my God. And she looks at the nurse and she said, you took off the bandage? You ripped it off? No wonder she's in pain. So the doctor goes about her business. She looks at it and she says, well, you hit an artery. That's why you're still bleeding. And sure enough, I look at my finger and she's pointing at it and she says, see that hole? That hole is your artery. So, fun fact, your arteries are pretty big and you can really see the hole when you slice them in half. So she doesn't know if she's going to be able to get the bleeding to stop, but she's going to try before she sends me to the emergency room. She pulls out this cool little thing. It looks like a sponge, but the minute it touches my finger, it's like it forms to the shape of my finger. It becomes its own funky little scab. And she tells me to leave it on there and that it should fall off on its own within a few weeks, possibly a few months. She said, but if it comes off before then and it's still bleeding, then I'm gonna need to go to the emergency room. She wraps up my finger, and unfortunately at this point, after passing out and everything else, I don't feel good enough to drive. And unfortunately, Steph didn't bring her driver's license because she hadn't been planning on driving this whole time. She only brought her state ID. So we have to call my mom back. My mom comes up with my dad drops off my mom, and then my mom drives my car, and we end up going back to my parents' house instead of my condo, where my parents and I take Steph out to dinner. She deserved it. She was a trooper. And then we go back, get Steph's stuff from my place, and drive her back to her house. It ended up being a few months before that scab fully fell off. I had a lot of trouble showering during that time because I wasn't allowed to get any of my bandages or that scab wet, so I would have to wrap my hand into a plastic bag. It was really difficult to scrub my hair, get all the shampoo, get all the conditioner out. That was really difficult. Eventually the scab fell off. Unfortunately, I still do not have any feeling in the tip of my finger. Occasionally I will hit the side of my finger right where the artery was cut off, and I will get a shooting pain. It'll be like one shooting just whoom pain. But that's about it. It feels kind of tingly whenever I touch my finger, but for the most part it's numb. And basically, that's my story of how I cut off part of my finger on St. Patrick's Day. I've got some more story times planned out, but don't worry, they're not nearly as bloody, not nearly as gruesome. That being said, you guys, it's been real, it's been really real, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next video.